Hello, everyone. We still have a few people logging in, so we'll give them a minute or two, and then we'll get started. All right, great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining the Link Center for this shared learning group focused on the topic of how relationships influence development and sense of self. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items while we get started. The session is being recorded, and the recording and the transcript will be made available on our website. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with others. Attendees cannot see the names of other attendees, and all attendees are muted. Please use the chat function in Zoom to communicate with other attendees and the host during the webinar. You can use the chat by clicking on chat at the bottom of your screen. And be aware that your name will appear in the chat if you make a comment. And if you'd like, you can change your display name by clicking on those three little dots next to your name and selecting Rename. We will have representatives from the Link Center watching the chat and responding throughout the session today. If you'd like to submit a question or a comment privately to the host and panelists, you can do that by clicking on the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We have live captioning and ASL interpreters present today. We will be spotlighting the active speaker and the ASL interpreter throughout the webinar. If you click on View on your Zoom screen, you can change the way you see the panelists. And if you're having any trouble with your view, you can let us know that in the chat and we will try to help you. At this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to Dr. Stacy Nonamaker, who's going to start today's presentation. Stacy, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. We are so excited to be talking and gathered here with you today. As Stephanie said, today we'll be talking about from childhood to community, how relationships influence development and sense of self, and really what your role as a direct support professional would be in that topic. So today's shared learning group is hosted by the Link Center. I am with the Link Center with NASDS, the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disability Services, who leads the Link Center along with a whole host of other partners, some which you will be hearing from today. And you'll also be hearing from somebody from our steering committee. Our steering committee is a group of 14 individuals with varied lived experience who guide the work of the Link Center. If you haven't already checked out our website, we encourage you to do so at the link on your screen or the QR code. We like to say, check us out and check back often. We have a lot of really great resources and information and news that we like to put on our website. Stephanie also put the link in the chat for you to access there as well. So that's a little bit about who we are, and we would love to know who you are, where you're joining us from, what your role is, perhaps organizations or any affiliations that you'd like to share. So if you could do that in the chat, we'd love to say hello. So these shared learning groups are quarterly meetings. We hold 4 meetings per quarter, 1 for DSPs, 1 for clinical professionals, 1 for people with lived experience, and 1 for families of people with lived experience. The topic is the same across all 4 of those gatherings. The information presented and the materials are usually the same, but the talking points may be a little different for each audience. The content that you'll see today is a collaboration among the Link Center partners, and those are folks with lived experience, researchers, and other people who work on policy issues. As Stephanie said, we're going to record today's meeting. We'll transcribe that so that you'll have those words and the things that we talk about, the materials that we have, and they will be available after the meeting. And we encourage you all to share everything that we share with you. And also tell people about the shared learning groups so that they can join us in some of our upcoming groups. The goals for our time together today is that we're going to share what we're doing at the Link Center and how we're thinking about relationships and their influence on development and sense of self. Hopefully, we'll impart on you the impact of relationships and how they impact our lives and the lives of the people we support. We're going to share some resources, and then you'll also help us come up with ways to solve example situations that we're going to present when we do a group exercise at the end. And finally, we have developed with our steering committee some really foundational agreements to our time together today. The first is take care of yourself. Do what is necessary for your comfort and care. We should be gentle with ourselves and each other because sometimes this work is hard to do. We celebrate that we are all individuals from different backgrounds. We celebrate that we have shared experiences to learn from. We know that we are each unique with our own experiences in the world. And finally, we listen and share with open minds and kindness, and we do not judge or blame others for what they share. So before I turn it over to some of our partners who are going to talk a little bit more about relationships and the impact on connections in our lives and in the lives of the people that you support, if you could all just take a moment and reflect on the relationships in your lives and think about what things are important to you in a relationship. It'll really help us set the stage for the rest of our time together today. So just take a moment, think about that, and pop a few words, if you will, in the chat. Communication, honesty, another honesty, transparency, patience, trust, connecting with people before correcting them, comfort, reciprocation, honesty and trust, humor. So many good things. Thank you so much. And I'm going to keep my eye on the chat. The rest of the presenters will keep their eyes on the chat as well as you all are offering some words. But let me now turn it over to one of our steering committee members, Victoria Villalobos Guerdo, who will continue to set the stage for our time together and talk a little bit more about why we think it's really important as the Link Center, whose mission is to increase mental health access for people with co-occurring conditions. So Victoria, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello. So what do we mean by relationships? From the moment we're born, every human will form different types of relationships throughout their life. These include parental, familial, friends, romantic, and professional/care providers. Next slide. So why are relationships important? Every relationship has different levels of comfort and trust. There are things that you'd be willing to share with your friends that you may feel uncomfortable telling a parent. Like an example being, you wouldn't tell your parents about your sex life, but you might be okay telling that up to your romantic partner. There are a ton of different things that we need separate relationships for. Likewise, there are types of support that you can only get from a care provider and not your friends and family. It is very important to have a variety of relationships to fulfill different needs. Next slide. So how do different types of relationships impact who you are and who we become? As humans, we are born as blank slates. Every single interaction in our lives contributes to the people we are today. And children are in a critical development period where every interaction molds who they are. These interactions also shape their views on how different relationship types work. Next slide. When a child is fed positive relationships, it leads them to feel safe, comfortable, and confident with who they are as people. When you're in a safe house, you never question if you're going to be okay. You never question if you're a bad person because your family provides this reassurance. However, when a child is fed negative relationships, they become scared, insecure, and withdrawn. These relationships in childhood also shape who they are as adults. If a child was punished for every negative emotion felt, they may never want to share how they truly feel and hold back a lot of information that could be really useful for their treatment and needs. Next slide. Why is it important to nurture relationships with people with co-occurring and multiple needs? People with dual diagnoses are just like you in these senses, but the relationships they carry hold a deeper effect, which is much harder to alter once the views are there. An example being, I'll talk about myself for a second. When I was about 16 years old, I was hospitalized. Before this hospitalization, every single hospitalization had bad experiences. The staff either didn't listen to me or I felt unheard. There were even times where I felt like they were actively trying to suppress how I felt for different things, or they just weren't reading who I was. This particular hospitalization, there was a nurse, her name was Tanya, and I could feel a breakdown coming up very quickly. I felt the emotions, I felt the warning signs, and I told Tanya, I am in a really bad state right now. I think I need to be put in the quiet room for my own good. And I have asked this from other hospitals before. Usually they tell me, oh, you're fine. And then when I do snap, they act surprised, like, oh my goodness, how unpredictable, even though I told them that what was going to happen. Tanya, on the other hand, she listened to me. She knows that I knew what I was going through, and she opened the quiet room to me. And the breakdown did happen, but because Tanya listened to me, I felt very safe. I felt like nobody could see how bad it was, and it was really good that she took the time to listen to me. This is something I'll never forget, and this one positive interaction with a nurse really changed how I felt about hospitals. So someone can have a lifetime of positive relationships, but it only takes one negative relationship to completely taint their view on an entire relationship type. Just like Tanya, I had so many bad if I had so many bad experiences in the hospital, and even if I had only good experiences, it would only take one bad experience for me to completely dismantle how I felt about the entire system. So it is possible to heal a tainted view after a bad relationships, but it does take a significant amount of time, trust, and effort. It's better to prevent these negative relationships from ever happening because it's easier to just go with it if there's nothing broken to begin with. When you have to fix something, it does take time. It did take me a minute to trust Tanya and to allow myself to be vulnerable with her. It is possible, though. Next slide.
Thanks so much, Victoria, for setting the stage and telling your story. We talk a lot with our steering committee about the shared learning group topics, and certainly we talked about this topic with our steering committee. And two things that really stood out for me when we spoke with them, and the one was how important peer relationships were, especially when they were people that could relate to or understand that person's experience. So I'm putting that out as well. The other thing that I want to mention, and Victoria, I think you touched on this just a bit, and I know that we'll be talking some more about this today, but just to emphasize and put a fine point on, our steering committee members talked a lot about those who have mental health conditions and may be struggling, for certain periods of time, for a day. It is so incredibly helpful to have people in their life that they can trust, that they respect, that they feel comfortable around, all the words that you were putting in the chat, to help those days when they're not feeling so great or the days when they're struggling, be tolerable. And Victoria, I know you and I talked a little bit about that word as well. So I just wanted to emphasize those points. So thanks again, Victoria, for that, and again for showing up and sharing your story always. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Miller, who is with the National Association of State Head Injury Administrators, one of our partners in the Link Center work. Thanks so much for joining us, Kelly.
Thank you for the invite. I am glad to be here, and thank you to everyone who is spending time with us today. Let's go next slide. So I'll start by sharing a little bit of information about a project that the Link Center has been working on, and we've been one of the partners with this project. The goal was to sort of explore how do we support children who have really complex needs. So kids who might have needs that don't necessarily fit into one system, kids with intellectual disabilities, kids with behavioral health needs, kids living with brain injury. So a whole host of co-occurring things going on. This project was funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Administration for Community Living. And it's been a multi sort of phased approach where Nancy Thaler was the project lead. And as a group together, she coordinated all of us assessing what a variety of different states are doing right now to meet the needs of kids with complex needs. We reviewed a lot of different policies that exist in different states. We had many, many focus groups with different agencies who work with children who have complex needs, and gathered just a ton of really enlightening and helpful, or we hope helpful, information. And the plan is to publish a report based on everything that was learned and make some recommendations about best practices and next steps. Next slide. Some of the things we learned from the project are that being with people that we like and who are important to us make us feel good, obviously. Doing things every day that make us feel good at home and in the community are important in order for anyone to have a good life. Families and helpers who understand who we are and what we need make a huge difference. And knowing really how the brain works, and that a lot of what children are experience is in terms of complex needs might be rooted in brain function, is a really important lens to have when it comes to figuring out how to help kids. And then also ensuring that children are getting the medical care that they need so that they are comfortable and healthy and able to thrive and live well in their homes. Next slide. So as Victoria mentioned, same question, why are relationships important? Let's talk a little bit more about that. Next slide. Well, just as relationships are important, loneliness is something that is important to factor into our well-being also. So loneliness is sort of just, it's feeling alone or disconnected from others. And even a person with a lot of friends can feel lonely. People who are extroverted and outgoing in the life of the party can still also feel very lonely. Both things can be true. And feeling lonely is a normal emotion. It's a normal thing for us to feel. There are some things that sometimes make it harder for us to connect with others, things like when we're not feeling well, when we go to a place that isn't inclusive, not having transportation to get somewhere. If you speak a different language, it's harder to connect with people. Not having a phone or assistive technology that you might need in order to communicate, or that others might need to communicate with you. And I feel like, and this is just Kelly's thoughts, feeling loneliness in childhood just has a different sort of flavor to it. It's a feeling that you feel in your bones when you're a kid. And I think that it really does impact your future relationships. And for me, I think about a time when I was a kid and my family moved across town. I had to start at a new school. I had been at my old school for 4 years, and we moved right at the end of the school year, and I had to finish out the last 3 weeks of my sixth grade year in a new school with people I did not know. So I was surrounded by people, including a few students who were friendly and were willing to befriend me, but I felt very lonely because I didn't know these people yet. I didn't have connections with them. So it's not necessarily about, having friendly, kind people around you. It's about the quality of the relationship that you have with them. I am happy to say that 40 years later, one of those girls who was willing to befriend me is actually still a very good friend of mine. So full circle. Next slide. It is interesting to think about the effects that loneliness can have on us. Loneliness truly, really can impact our health. Research tells us that loneliness can have the same long-term health impacts as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's really significant when you think about it. Sadly, loneliness can also increase the risk of shortening our lifespan. Again, feeling lonely is a normal emotion. It's just that when we feel lonely a lot is when our health can really be impacted. Part of that can be when we're lonely, we become isolated, or maybe we're isolated and then we feel lonely. But that can lead to feeling depressed, and not having the energy or the interest in really taking good care of ourselves, or not letting others take care of us too. So just things to think about in terms of the impact of loneliness. Next slide. So what in the world could we do to change that? Ricky, I see your comment in the chat. Let's not start smoking. I appreciate your sense of humor. And so one of the things that can help to obviously combat the effects of loneliness is having relationships. And in the research, there's this phrase that you see often when you're looking about the importance of relationships, and it is safe, supportive, nurturing relationships, or SSNR, if we want to put an acronym on it. But really, there's a lot of power in having safe, supportive, nurturing relationships. Positive relationships are the one thing that seems to be the most influential, most important in terms of helping kids really get through tough times, is if they have at least one safe, supportive, nurturing relationship with an adult. That seems to really help them manage and get through really difficult times. Of course, relationships with teachers matter for educational engagement and academic achievement. Compared to kids who don't have many friends or don't have good friends, kids who have what they would say are good friends have higher self-esteem. This helps them to be able to be more comfortable in social situations, and that higher self-esteem helps kids cope with life stressors and transitions better. They're also less likely to be bullied or victimized by peers. And really, the studies have shown that consistent support from parents, peers, direct caregivers, important adults can enhance the mental health of adolescents, and that safe, supportive, nurturing relationships decrease the odds of engaging in risky behavior. And this is particularly true for those teenagers who have experienced adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, if some of you are familiar with that. Next slide. So as Victoria mentioned, we have different needs, and different relationships help us fulfill those different needs. So this is just kind of a diagram or graphic of some of the different types of connection that we all need to a certain degree and benefit from. And the intimate connection doesn't necessarily mean physical intimacy. It means intimacy more in terms of having a strong connection with a confidant or a partner, a friend, or a sibling. So it's not strictly a romantic or physical relationship. The relational relationship realm is around social relationships, social companions, like friendships, and helping professionals. And that collective relationship is feeling like we're part of a larger network, feeling connected to something maybe larger. This could look like a spiritual relationship or a faith-based relationship. Next slide. And of course, we know these different types of connections and relationships are important to us more or less in different stages of life. For example, as a teenager, we kind of prioritize our relationships and who we spend our time with a little differently than when we become adults. I can say for myself as an adult, I really don't have any FOMO or fear of missing out on things anymore. When I was a teenager, I sure did. I didn't want to miss parties or fun things, but as an adult, what fills my cup more is less relationships that are more meaningful. So I think that this is true to a certain degree, one way or another across the lifespan, sort of relationships, just the value of different relationships shifts over time. Positive relationships with parents can strengthen a child's self-esteem. We mentioned previously the value of self-esteem, but that positive self-esteem leads to positive peer relationships, which leads to positive relationships with peers. So it's sort of like this great circular thing that can really be very impactful for kids when it comes to surrounding themselves with people who care about them and are invested in them. It's not really a lack of relationships that might make us feel lonely. It's a lack of meaningful relationships that can make us feel lonely. And why, I'm just wondering, maybe something to put in the chat, but if you think about that, having close friends boosts self-esteem. Okay, and having high self-esteem boosts the quality of your friendships. Why might that be? If this is something you'd like to think about and maybe put a comment in the chat, why do you think high self-esteem could influence the quality of your relationships? Maybe, if I have good self-esteem, I might be more likely to pick better friends. Be willing to take a chance in engaging people. Oh, yes, Piper, more willing to set healthy boundaries. That is great feedback. Yeah, if you have pretty solid self-esteem, you're probably comfortable establishing what you're okay with in a relationship and what you're not okay with in a relationship. Yeah, you have better inner strength. You know, maybe when a relationship isn't good for you, that it's time to end it and go your separate ways with someone. Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, thinking about this too, in terms of the people you work with and the people you support, what are some ways you can maybe have conversations with them about how self-esteem might impact the quality of their relationships? And steering, the health of a relationship too. Next slide. So this slide sort of illustrates a little bit of kind of a relationship teeter-totter. So the important things to think about here are that, again, kids with low self-esteem are likely to experience less social support and unfortunately more negative relationships over time. So this really emphasizes the importance of timely support to disrupt this cycle. So timely ways that you can intervene and support people. The good news is, from what I've read, is most people gradually improve their self-esteem as they grow up and come into adulthood. Maybe that's because hopefully we are learning as we go through relationships and get better about choices that we're making with who we spend our time with. The piece about this teeter-totter and the fulcrum. So I want to share something that some of the folks in the steering committee shared when we talked about this topic. And they talked about how neglect during childhood or being misunderstood during childhood can have a real lasting impact on us as individuals into adulthood. The nice thing is people felt like developing positive and healthy relationships can kind of restore some of that damage that was done, some of those feelings that kind of linger and the hurt that stays with us, those bad experiences in childhood can kind of be healed through developing positive relationships after the fact. So child development is kind of like a balanced scale with two sides, and experiences that result in a lot of stress, like repeated exposure to violence or poverty or maltreatment, kind of pile on the negative side of the scale. So positive influences that can help make like stress tolerable, such as supportive relationships, skill building opportunities, developing self-efficacy, practicing managing challenging situations, they can tip the scale the other way. So we have, the good and the bad kind of on the scale, weighing each other along the way. Now, the interesting piece is this fulcrum in the middle, or the part that the teeter-totter sits on. That represents kind of who we are as a person, what your individual makeup is like that you bring to experiences. So if that fulcrum moves to one side of the scale, it gets harder to shift it that direction. The way that we can help people move that fulcrum is by supporting them, by helping them develop safe, supportive, nurturing environments. They do boost their self-esteem, and they can move that fulcrum so that even if the scale's heavy with some negative stuff, they've moved that fulcrum and they're able to cope with it, and their teeter-totter can lift up, and the positive things will be what will come through. So I think this is really encouraging information. It's very interesting to think about the cumulative effect that relationships have on us across our lifespan, but it doesn't necessarily mean that is a fixed outcome for any of us. Next slide. So what are some things that we can do as supporters? Next slide. How do I, show up as a supporter in a way that really creates a safe, secure, nurturing relationship for someone? This is feedback that we got from members of the steering committee who said, it's important for someone to be sincere and authentic, and show up in that way. You might think, yeah, I'm sincere, I'm authentic, but to be really intentional about your interactions so that gets conveyed with the person. Doing things like paying attention to a person's interests and circling back with them to see how they're doing, checking in. Not always having to be the solution, but being the support, looking for answers together, being honest, which means sometimes having to say, I don't know how, I can't guarantee that everything is going to be okay, but I'm willing to help you and I'm here with you to support you getting through these challenging times. So showing up in a way that's authentic, honest, being present. And one person shared that sometimes, when they were a child, they would have someone who'd like be real inconsistent in their relationship with them. See them and sometimes say, "Oh, yeah, how are you? It's great to see you." See them again and not even say anything. So those inconsistencies can be very puzzling, and it can lead to a person not being sure about when someone is being authentic or not. Can I trust this person or not? So that consistency piece was really something that was highlighted by members in the steering committee when we talked about what's important in relationships. Next slide. So what could I do as a supporter in terms of supporting those relational or social connections? You know, we don't all come, there's no instruction manual for how to have a friendship or how to build or tend relationships. So if you have experience in that, that's something you can share with people you're working with. Maybe, a little bit of coaching about how do you nurture a new relationship? How do you tend a relationship to keep it healthy? Checking in with someone about relationship dynamics, and having conversations about whether or not those dynamics are helpful and healthy and good for them or not. Modeling friendship skills, maybe supporting someone to explore a new area of interest as a way of connecting with new friends or new peers. These are all probably things that you've done in the past. But the piece here is just really, they really can, I think, be a great sort of return on investment of your time in terms of helping people building relationships and connections with people. Next slide. So what can we do to support people in sort of thinking about those collective relationships? That feeling of like, yeah, I feel like I'm part of a community. I feel like I'm part of something bigger. That was something also we heard from steering committee members is really the value of found family and the value of community is incredibly important. It might look different for different people, but it's incredibly important. So doing things like helping someone to explore opportunities to help others might be a way of building that collective sense of something larger. Exploring faith-based interests or spiritual interests. Doing some groundwork for people to see if a new place they're going to explore actually is inclusive. Does it have accommodations that they might need in order to enter and be there and engage physically in the way that they should be able to? Um, and supporting someone, maybe just asking about, do you have any goals around, you know, spiritual connectedness or community, becoming more involved in your community? Is there anything you'd like to explore there that we could do together? Sometimes having those conversations might reveal something or kind of get some brainstorming going. Next slide. And we'll kind of wrap up here with just a few thoughts about power. Children particularly perceive grown-ups as having the power, and which puts us in the place of always having to use our power for good rather than evil. If you want to make a little bit of a Star Wars analogy, we have to choose the good, so, using power over a person makes a person feel sad and lonely. And when you have power over, it looks like, not listening, telling people what to do, not giving people a chance to make a choice, shaming, blaming, bullying. So, that's what it looks like having power over people. When you are sharing power with a person, you are empowering them. You are listening, you're making them feel valued, understanding and promoting their ability to make choices and to provide choices, coming alongside them and sharing empathy. Those are all ways that look like sharing our power with people, which is incredibly important, especially for the little people in our lives. And honestly, that brings us all back to the importance of creating those safe, stable, nurturing relationships, which we know benefit mental health, academic outcomes, self-esteem, relationships, all these really important things during childhood that help us have a good foundation moving into adulthood. So that concludes my section of the slides, and I'm going to turn it over to Max and Zeta.
Kelly, before we do that, and sorry, Max and Zeta, this is Stacy again. I offered in the chat if there are any other things as supporters who are with us today, any thoughts that they may have that they do to help create safe, secure, nurturing relationships that perhaps you didn't talk about, or anything that people may want to offer. In addition, I think this piece, and thank you so much, Kelly, for all of the pieces of information that you shared. And I think this piece for myself, I started in this field professionally as a direct support professional. And I think this concept of using power to make people feel good is really important. And I think even those of us that are well intended in our support of others, that sometimes we may use our power, right, to usurp or take over decisions that people are making. And I shared a story with Kelly when we were talking about this content, and I'm just curious if other direct support professionals today on this shared learning group can relate to. But as a very young direct support professional who, I wasn't getting paid very much, let's be honest, and I supported a woman who lived in her own apartment, who loved to go out to eat and loved to go to fancy restaurants that I couldn't afford. And so, um, not proud of it, but sometimes when we were deciding what to do for the day, I would try to offer places that I knew I could afford to eat at. And not necessarily the places that Joan wanted to go and eat at, because Joan had the funds, right, to go to those fancier, more expensive places. So I just want to say, I think that sometimes we use our role or our position of power unintentionally, and it's not always, um, it may be with good intentions and not bad intentions necessarily. But I think it's also really important for us to be aware as supporters that we're doing that, right? So I just wanted to offer that as another story. And I think that this power dynamic piece really plays a huge role in that relationship between supporters and the individuals and people that they support. So, Kelly, I see that there's some chatter in the chat.
Yeah, I think, and I, I see here Ricky has the comment that recently making a friend, um, and that sometimes, finding people, helping people find supports isn't really like we don't take a college course on that, right? There's not a pamphlet on here's the 10-step process to help someone find a friend. So some of this is trial and error. Some of it might feel outside of our wheelhouse. And I think when it does, that's okay to have those honest conversations with people of what do you think I can do to be helpful, and bringing in other peers too. Um, and just, presenting in that way that's honest and sincere is golden, even if you don't have the answers, because that's what is really at the root of being so powerful in relationships is being present and just being honest. Um, and I think what you're saying too, Stacy, I just so appreciate that story. And sometimes in our role, we go through the motions and we do what we think we're supposed to be doing, and we can get our blinders on. And I know I've done that in the past, and sometimes working with individuals, I know I made the mistake of just saying, "Oh, you can't do that way," instead of this, let me show you a way that might be easier for you and more effective to do this particular thing. You
Yeah.
know, um, and so it's even just in some of these little nuances that we always need to have on the radar. I'm curious with direct, in your role, are there things you've done that turned out to, go really well in terms of helping someone navigate a relationship or, get connected with their community in terms of finding that sense of community and feeling a part of something.
Kelly, and while people think about that as well, there's a couple other comments I want to read out loud from the chat. Ricky says, I am open because I naturally have no filters. The folks who dig working with me thank me for my incessant honesty. Yeah, and Ricky, honesty and being honest turned up several times earlier in the chat. And I think a lot of people can relate to that as being a quality that we look for in a friend or others that are in our lives. Margie says, being a sincere person with positive feedback for that person that really needs someone to be there for them as a supporter. So to your point too, Kelly, about getting feedback, being open to that feedback, asking the person that we support, right? How can we help? How can we be supported and not make the assumption too? And then Piper says, letting the person know you are on their team, not against their team. But being on their team sometimes means that you will disagree. And how do you approach that in a safe, secure, and not damaging way? Great.
I love that feedback. And yeah, how do you have it? We all have to have difficult conversations in our relationships, right? And so sometimes just saying, um, just being honest about whatever the topic is and saying, this is something we need to talk about, or I'd really like to talk about. And I want to have this conversation with you in a way that I don't want to hurt your feelings or say something that might damage our relationship. So if I do, I need you to tell me. Because I might not know the best words here, but I'm gonna do my best. So just that honesty.
Yeah. And I think for me, that points to how critical it is on the best days to provide that safe, secure relationship so that when things are tough or when somebody is struggling, you have that foundation or you have that baseline of a safe, secure relationship so that you can have those tough conversations. You can, manage that perhaps negative situation or experience, right? Together without it in a safe, secure, not damaging way, like Piper describes. So I think that's a really, really valid point. Tim said, I'm sorry, Kelly, were you going to say something else about that
Oh,
point?
nope, go ahead.
Okay, great. Tim says there's a balance I find between analyzing everyone as a potential friend and just letting friendships and relationships evolve. I think there needs to be a balance of both. You analyze too much, it can make it tough to connect and can seem insincere. But if you don't analyze enough, you can get used or end up with folks who aren't healthy for you.
Very true. And that really speaks to the importance of, as we're growing up, that foundation of having an experience of a safe, stable, nurturing relationship with someone. So we have, our spidey sense will go up when someone doesn't maybe feel like they're going to be safe or supportive. Um, and relationships can be tricky for everyone. That's the bottom line too. So sometimes having someone who you can talk to about this new person in your life might be helpful also. But
Yeah.
that's such a good point. It is such a
Yeah.
balance uh, between letting something evolve and also you know, being just on the lookout for red flags and things that might not be worth letting it evolve.
Well, thank you all for entertaining that little bit of dialogue and back and forth. Appreciate hearing from you all. And thanks again, Kelly, so much for your presentation. So now we'll turn it over to Max and Zeta to do the group exercise.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad to do this exercise. So what we're going to do is we're going to read you a scenario, and then your job is to respond to how the scenario is should be handled. Oh, and by the way, I'm Max Barrows, and I'm outreach director for Green Mountain Self Advocates. And for those who are, I want to just say a quick introduction that I'm wearing a white shirt with thin blue stripes with a black tie. I'm a black man with black headphones on with black hair, and I have a Link Center background as my filter for for people that can see me on screen. So here's how this is going to work. I'll read, and then what we'll do is we'll have you say what it is you want to say about the scenario that we are going to present to you on how to handle it, and put them in chat, put your responses in chat. However, if you do want to say them out loud, feel free to unmute yourself, and we will call on you if you indicate to us that you want to speak. All righty. So, and I'm sorry, Zeta, if you want to introduce yourself, I don't want to hog the floor here.
Well, thank you, Max, for setting things up. I'm Zeta Ricker. I work with the National Association of State Head Injury Administrators, which is one of the Link Center partners. And I'll just be supporting Max through this group exercise. I'm excited to hear from you all.
All right. All right, here we go. So, the Welsleys live in rural Kansas and have been fostering children for about 5 years. Since their own children are grown and out of the house, recently they were asked to foster a 12-year-old girl named Keisha. Keisha has lived in 9 different homes in 10 years. Her mother died from an overdose soon after Keisha was born, and her grandparents were unable to care for her due to her own medical needs. Keisha loves dogs and to draw. She says art is her favorite class. At home, Keisha is withdrawn, preferring to stay in her room alone. At home and school, she becomes verbally and physically aggressive when she is asked to do something she does not want to do. She also takes things that are not hers from classmates, stores, and the Welsleys. Martha Wellesley worked part-time at the school, and Gene Wellesley has his own construction business. Their children and grandchildren visit once a week for family dinners. So our question to you all is, what are some opportunities that you can capitalize on for Keisha to build meaningful relationships? And how can you help Keisha build meaningful relationships?
Thank you, Max. Just as a reminder, if you would like to share your comment aloud, you can click the raise hand button and then we'll allow you to unmute. Or you can put your comments in the chat and someone will, Max or I will read it out loud to the group.
Looks like Jackie Flaherty says link her and family to occupational therapy. Ricky Dennis says see if she wants to meet with any local artists and facilitate meetings with them if she is into it. Stacy says, does Keisha have a good relationship with her art teacher? It's kind of a question. Maggie Kerr says, I think trying to give Keisha open conversations by letting her know how important and valuable she is would be a great start. Victoria Villalobos Galaro says, as someone who has been in a similar but not identical situation to Keisha, but bonding over art dogs and other interests can be a gateway into teaching her trust. And then Tim Tunner says, I love that idea of building upon her interest in art. And I'm sorry, Victoria, if I almost wrecked your name.
It looks like Lou raised
Oh, go ahead.
her hand.
Can you hear me? I'm talking.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay, great. I'm assuming there isn't a dog in the house, so the first thing I would do is get her a dog, a gentle dog that she could have at home to bond and to work with, but it's got to be a situation where the family likes dogs and can be with her. I know we have a dog therapy camp for our foster kids in LA that we do. It is completely awesome for the kids and their relationship. So I would look into what kind of places. There's all kinds of dog rescue that she could volunteer and open up. I mean, the same with the art. But the key to all of this is the family, or at least one of the parents, has to take an equal interest with her on what she's doing. Otherwise, she's alone again in her relationship with the dog or in art. And what you want to do is build the relationship, which means family's got to adopt a dog, family's got to take the art class with her, talk about it, relate it with her, take her to the museums to view art. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Good list of things and good things to point out. I got some more in the chat. One from Piper Quinley, and she says, or they said, I think that showing an interest in learning about or doing something she enjoys shows effort to engage and connect with her. Being intentional in that engagement will be important. Stacy says, does she live in a neighborhood where she could offer to be a dog walker, creating meaningful paid relationship? Stephanie Moat says, do the Wellesley children and grandchildren enjoy art? Is that something Keisha could do with them when they come visit?
I love the thought, Stephanie, about thinking about the children and grandchildren who are there, maybe are closer in age to Keisha that could be friends. And as Kelly shared, the power of making friendships that could be lifelong.
Mhm. More in the chat. Such amazing suggestions. Really thoughtful. Yeah, from Kelly Miller. Lou says also also that many placements may be more a sign of other issues than companionship that needs to be addressed. Mhm. Anybody else? These are very good thoughts here. We got what the silence tells me, Zeta, is people are still thinking, unless there's an indicator that they can't think of any more. But usually I take silence as a indicator that people are thinking. Here we go. Margie Kerr says, I like the idea of getting the grandkids involved. It gives Keisha a sense of belonging. Anything else?
Wow, a lot of really great ideas and very meaningful, thoughtful engagement. So we appreciate it.
Mhm. Piper Quinley says, I think having connection with those in her home is really important so that she has a sense of belonging. Yep. Stacy Nenemaker says, since Mr. Wesley is in construction, he may also have a creative side. Could the two of them do some things together related to art? And Margie Kerr says belonging has a way of healing the heart. Ricky Dennis says, as someone into solitude, I hope we can allow some alone time.
I really appreciate that thought, Ricky, thinking about what Keisha needs to recharge as well is important.
Of course, everything needs a balance,
Yeah.
Margie Kerr says.
I think we've really gotten to what some of these opportunities are as direct support professionals. Can you think of ways that you could help if you were in the situation to build meaningful relationships, or think about if you were in the parent's shoes or as outside partners in any way? How can you help Keisha build meaningful relationships?
Hmm. Maybe art therapy could help Keisha to express herself and her needs in healthy ways. Margie Kerr says through conversation and including her in the day-to-day life.
Ricky says encourage her to join or start an art club with peers. And said, I wonder if making art that she could donate would be something to consider. Painting pictures for a children's medical office or something similar. I love all of these ideas.
Did you read all those already in chat, or there's more coming? Where was I? Okay, I wonder if oh yeah, you probably read this. Finding a volunteer program when she could help others learn how to do different projects or skills. That's from Piper Winley. Kelly Miller says, I also appreciate Ricky's comment about solitude. Sometimes we need that to fill our cup as well. I wonder if I missed one.
I don't think so, except for Stacy's that just came in as a supporter, perhaps work with her in the family home modeling ways that Mr. and Mrs. Wellesley can engage with Keisha around her interests.
Piper just said, also impressive pronunciation on the last name. Most people do not get it first tries.
Maybe give it a couple more minutes for any final comments from folks.
Sure.
I'm not seeing any more. What do you? Oh, of course, as soon as I see that, Kelly jumps in. When I worked in child welfare, sometimes we would make life books with kids, maybe doing that with Keisha so she can create a book with pages about the people who have been important to her.
Mm-hmm. And I got one from Jackie Flaherty. I wonder if giving Keisha ways to care for the dog and take her dog to a dog park to interact with others, pets, and families would be helpful. This is all really good. Mm-hmm. Yes, agree. Great ideas. Thank you, everyone. Stacy says.
What do you think, Max? Should we wrap
I
things
think,
up?
I think this is all good. I think everybody, or as many people as possible, got as many good ideas in as possible. So I really think that we're at a good point where we can move on. Thank you, everybody. And I believe that I turn it over to Tim Tunner. Timothy, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Tim Tunner, and I work for the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors as a part of the Link Center. And first, everyone, thank you again for all your input and really some great ideas. One thing, if we could ask, if you could put in the chat, what are your go-to resources, trainings, websites, and places you go to get information about relationships? Um, Anything you can put in the chat would be helpful. We look at this stuff, and the Link Center develops materials that we put into the website. So anything that would be really helpful that we can dig through, um, that would be helpful. Please let us know, because we do get asked for information, and we definitely do use it. So please add any resources, trainings, anything that you can that you know of that you use regularly to get information about relationships. So here's a schedule of the past and upcoming shared learning groups, and you can find the recordings, transcripts, and material from past events on the Link Center website. And you can also find and register for upcoming shared learning groups on the website as well. The next topic will be health and well-being, which will be in January. And you can visit the Link Center's website at any time. The address and link are here on the screen, and someone will also drop it into the chat as well. And you can email the Link Center if you have questions or suggestions at any time. Again, we're constantly evolving and growing the website, so please send recommendations for it. We also have a quick evaluation that we hope you will complete for us. On the screen is the QR code that you can scan with your phone, and we'll put it into the link into the chat as well. And it will also pop up when we close today and will be sent out to everyone in an email. Your feedback and evaluation really helps us to make improvements and adjustments for future webinars and products, and for the Link Center in general. So thank you again for participating today. A special thank you to our colleagues, Victoria, Kelly, and Nancy. We would like to thank our steering committee as well, as always, for sharing their thoughts and experiences that are invaluable to these shared learning groups. Thank you also to the ACL, the Administration for Community Living, and to all of the partners for contributing to the preparation of content for this meeting. So that's all we have for today. Thank you again, and please have a great afternoon.